Welcome to today's video. We're talking today with Sean O'Donnell, and Sean and I are going to discuss traveling in Alaska. We're going to talk about a couple of options. We're going to talk about accessibility. To start with, Sean, you want to give us a little bit of your background?
So basically, I'm a lifelong Alaskan, and I've been all over the state, from the very, very tip all the way down to Ketchikan, the other tip, and pretty much anywhere in between. I really enjoy and pretty much live in the outdoors. Pretty much the Alaskan lifestyle. I like to camp and fish and hike and mountain bike and kayak and ski and everything else that goes along with it. Fat tire biking, pretty just about anything you can think of that's not motorized powered. I like to enjoy in the outdoors. I've stayed at a lot of different lodgings, pretty much just about every campground you can think of, all over the Denali National Park, a lot of the roadside national parks. And so over a lifetime of doing that, I've pretty much gained a knowledge of places to stay, eat, enjoy, and I feel like I have a knowledge that I can share with other people.
Okay, well, very nice. And I have to say this, it was kind of interesting because first of all, my wife and I've been to Alaska a couple of times. We've had a couple of trips got canceled due to the pandemic. And you know, Alaska is probably, well, I know Alaska is my favorite destination. I mean, far and away. I think Alaska is probably at the top of the list for my wife as well. And she travels with a wheelchair. And we have found that in general, we've had really good success in Alaska. I interviewed a young lady that's paraplegic the other day, and we talked about it, and she was absolutely amazed. She was in Talkeetna, and she called for a taxi or a shuttle, and they showed up with something that had a lift and was set up to handle a wheelchair. And it was, she said, the person that was driving it asked her why she was surprised. And she says, well, he says, isn't that the law? And she said, yes, but you're one of the few people that understand that. But we talked about the Alaskan Railroad and, you know, the things that, you know, that make Alaska so enjoyable and so accessible. And I would second that. Though Seward doesn't have Seward, they have a crank lift to get you off the train. Because I have a video. In fact, the town or the Visitors Bureau in Seward followed my wife and I around town shooting video at the SeaLife Center, and we getting off the train and we did a major marine tour. That's a, you know, again, that's the other direction. We'll probably come on some of that in the next segment. But okay, so and I can't say enough about the train, and I would say that it is worth spending the extra for the Gold Dome service or the Gold Star service. I forget what it is, because and they have an elevator. This is kind of amazing. Now my wife's not a little elevator person, so they took her chair up for her, but she worked her way up the steps rather than get it, because you have to be able to deal with confined spaces on the elevator. It's open above, but it's still pretty small. But they can take you and your wheelchair upstairs. They have downstairs. They have an accessible bathroom. They have accessible meal service, and I haven't gone north out of Anchorage, but we did the trip to Seward, and that was amazing. So it's one of those things you should, if you get to Alaska, it's one of those things that you should put on your list.
Absolutely.
And like I said, your first trip to Alaska, you better take a notebook, because you're going to have a lot of other things to go on that list. It's going to be a big list. Okay, well, I have enjoyed our trip north. So let's say we got into Anchorage and we did a little bit of the sightseeing in Anchorage, like we did when we were going to head north. Now, but we're going to head south. So what's the plan?
So a lot of people like to stop. It's not really very far from Anchorage. It's a good place. You can go and even stay. It's close enough to Anchorage that if you get off the plane and you don't want to spend any time in Anchorage, you can drive down to the community of Girdwood. It's an old mining community. It's now a resort community, and it's worth a stopover, or you can make that a separate trip. The highlights there is, again, some really nice restaurants, a lot of nice little shops. There's a few little trails. There's a great paved trail that travels the entire, basically all around the town, that's paved and totally easy to go on a wheelchair. There's actually a really nice hotel there, and you can ride the tram from there up to the top of Mount Alaska. And there's a 5-diamond restaurant called the Seven Glaciers. It has the bar there, and the dining have views that you would be hard pressed to find anywhere in the world. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then there's actually a viewing deck that when you're done, you can take out and go and overlook the valley and take pictures, and it's pretty spectacular. So Girdwood is definitely worth a stop. It's a beautiful rainforest. I think it's the northernmost rainforest in the entire world. There's actually, I think, the first little bit, maybe a few hundred yards, half mile of the Winter Creek Trail, I think actually is wide enough and probably easy enough where you could do a scooter or wheelchair on that as well. I've hiked that quite a few times, and I was racking my brain. I was like, yeah, I think you could probably do that. But in any way, it's a decent stop, and I think a lot of people really enjoy it.
Okay. So now we have a quandary.
Yes.
Because we get up in the morning in Girdwood,
Yeah.
having spent the night and enjoyed the restaurant and all of that.
Yeah.
We have two directions we can go.
Yes.
So which way are we going to go first?
Well, are you referring to going to Whittier or what?
Yeah, you had the choice really of Whittier or Seward, right, from there?
You kind of more or less do Whittier's. Basically, you're going to go south no matter what, but you can divvy it up time like that. So some of the things that, and also, by the way, I forgot to mention is you can also do flight seeing right out of Girdwood too. There's actually helicopter tours that will take you flying over the Chugach Mountains, and they'll fly you up and land on the glacier, in fact. And there's also a really nice microbrewery there. So yeah, so next, yeah, you can go and drive down to Portage. And there's the Portage area. There's the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. So maybe you skipped the zoo, maybe you didn't, but it's basically a little more interpretive, a little more, it's not exactly like a zoo, but there's a lot of wild Alaskan animals. There's wood bison, some animals that have been introduced to Alaska, elk, and there's a wolf pack there. You can totally travel around that with a wheelchair. If you continue on into Whittier, there's the Portage Glacier Cruise. It's a ship. You get on it and it goes across Portage Lake, and then you get across the wall of ice and lake there. And there's also the Biggitch Bogs, visitor center that you can visit right there, and it's got a lot of interpretive information and has pictures of what the glacier and stuff look like. Then you go through the tunnel, so you can drive through the tunnel and then onto the town of Whittier, which might be, again, a very unique Alaskan town. Pretty much the entire population, or 99% of the population, lives in one building, which used to be an old army barracks, as a matter of fact.
Yep. And there's a couple of good options there. I'll talk for a minute because I've actually interviewed both of the operators, but there are two tour operators that operate water tours out of there. Yep. They both go out and do glaciers, and one of them does a lot of like kayaking. So for those people that are don't have any mobility challenges and then wanted to go out and do some kayaking, there's one of the tour companies that specializes in that. They have accommodations on board for those that are not, that have mobility limitations, but like I said, the kayaking and stuff becomes more of a challenge once you get off the ship. The other one does what they call a 26 glacier tour. So if you like glaciers and you want to see a bunch of them, the 26 glacier tour out of Whittier gives you the highest concentration of glaciers that you can probably find in Alaska. I think even more so than Glacier Bay.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
So that's a good option if you're in Whittier. Like I said, the whole town is pretty much wheelchair accessible. All of that works. Yep.
And it's a stunning setting. I mean, it's basically, ocean to the mountains, just right there. They're just straight there. You're surrounded by mountains again. If you look right across the water there's there's flocks of seabirds resting on cliffs and stuff. You can kayak, you can take the 26 Glacier Cruise. Another thing that's a new thing they have is they actually have jet ski tours, and you and your loved one can rent jet skis and take it out with, I think, a guide, and they take you out for a few hours and go to Blackstone Bay. So that's another option too, but it's really one of my very favorite destinations. It's kind of unspoiled. There's actually a new road that travels along the southern side of the same side as town you go on, and you can drive up there, and there's some beautiful views just to get out and look around in fresh air. Nice big white gravel. You can have a picnic. There's barbecue grills and picnic tables and a nice area out there that you can really enjoy.
Okay, well, very nice. So from where, let's say that we go to Whittier, we're done. Now we're going to want to go farther south.
Yeah. So now you're heading down actually onto the Kenai Peninsula proper. The thing about the Kenai Peninsula is it seems like, other than Denali, that's where overwhelmingly most tourists come to when they come to Alaska, unless they're doing a cruise in Southeast. And overwhelmingly people from South Central Alaska, this is our playground. This is where we go to play pretty much on the weekends. And the highway on the going south on a Friday evening is it pretty much shows that. So there's just so much to do. But what we're going to do is we're going to drive through what's called Turnagain Pass. We're going to drive through the Chugach National Forest, and we're going to head down to the town of Seward. And there is, first of all, beautiful setting. I mean, you could literally just park and just sit on the edge of the water there and do nothing else and be completely content. But there is a lot to do. The first thing, and I think one of the big draws, is the SeaLife Center, which is actually featured on a National Geographic show. So is the Wildlife Conservation Center, I might add. And the other probably big draw is going and doing a boat tour of the Kenai Fjords National Park, which is spectacular. Not just the scenery, but you'll probably see gray whales, humpback whales, maybe orcas, doll porpoise, all kinds of puffins and seabirds and stuff. And you can choose your tour. There's anything from like a 3 or 4 hour tour all the way to like 8-hour tour and possibly longer. You're out on the ocean all day, but it's definitely worth it.
And I will say I had the privilege of doing the major marine tour out of there, not doing a commercial boat because I didn't have a chance to experience the other one. We were there getting ready to leave on a cruise, but we got in the day before. And Seward is very accessible. They have a walkway that follows the bay around from the SeaLife Center all the way back to downtown. There is, if you go from the SeaLife Center directly across the hill toward the harbor, it is a little bit of a push. I took my wife up over the hill because I thought it would be faster than going around. I'm not sure in the long run if it was worth it, but it's not bad. We were able to do it. It's just it was a cold, gray, rainy day, and I was impatient, so we went that direction. But well, it had been a long week. But I would vote for the longer tour, the longest tour that fits your budget. Sure. Either Major Marine or the other tour company that operates out of Seward, because there is so much to see. We saw gray whales, we saw doll porpoises, puffins, all kinds of seabirds. We saw mountain goats, and it was kind of funny because the captain took the boat up, and we weren't a foot from the rock wall in one of the canyons, and just to show us how steep it was. And they had a really good, I think it was I don't know if it was prime rib and salmon, but they had some kind of high-end beef and salmon, and it was, the buffet on board was really good too. In the bay, the water was really calm. Now, we did have some people when we got out around the barrier islands that sit out there where it was a little bit rough, and some people had some challenges, but that's a great trip. Let me go back up along the highway tour before we get into Seward. Now, the train I know runs along Kenai Lake. Does the highway run the other side of the lake or along the lake there, or?
No, actually, they run concurrently. So they run. That's the thing. I mean, I get a little out of order, but we'll talk about it. So my personal favorite train ride is the train to Seward, because it'll travel a lot of distances through the mountains that the highway does not. But the stretch along the Kenai Lake, they basically run right parallel to each other. Right,
parallel to each other. Okay, yeah, because that was kind of interesting. And let me get your opinion, because again, we talk about timing. Yes. I am thinking that during the salmon run, that the train where it runs, because I guess it's after you leave the Kenai Lake area, there's a whole area that's full along the train tracks that are full of small little channels. And I am betting that there are salmon and bear up in that area. There is. And the salmon running.
Yeah. It's not uncommon when you're driving into Seward to see bears along the riverbanks there at all.
Yeah. So
it's not super, super common, but it's not uncommon. I mean, it's very possible to have done it many times.
And so now in Seward, if my memory runs correct, you can get pretty close. Is it Exit Glacier that you can get pretty close to?
You're stealing my thunder here, Ken.
Sorry, I'll let you go.
So the bike path, and let me give you a little pro tip is, yes, if you're going to go from one end of town to the other, take the bike path. It's much more scenic and it's much flatter, and I just enjoy walking with my dogs when I'm there. It's really easily accessible. It's a great bike path. I highly recommend it. Yes, you can drive right down to Exit Glacier Road, and there's actually a couple of pull-offs that on the way there that you can stop and take pictures. You can take pictures of the Resurrection River. But once upon a time, I wouldn't say much anymore because of the receding glacier and the climate change and stuff, it's not as good. But when I was in my 20s, you could literally walk right up to the face of the glacier and touch it on flat ground. Now it's receded back, but it's still worth a visit. You can take your wheelchair actually on the trail a fair amount of distance till it starts going uphill and gets rough like that. And lots of parking, and it's just right there. It's huge. And the valley that it's in is really spectacular. And the Exit Glacier actually is part of Kenai Fjords National Park. A lot of people don't know that, but that's one end of the other park. And then what it does is it goes up into a giant ice field, and it's really beautiful. Yep, no doubt about it.
Okay, so we visited Seward. We went out to Exit Glacier. I'm sorry about stealing your thunder. Where are we going to go next?
Well, if you want to leave Seward, because there's still more to do there, but we can certainly move on. Is a nice spot to stop. You can either do lodge there. There's some lodges and cabins, a lot of really cute. There's the area called Cooper Landing, which is to the west of Seward. So you're kind of backtracking down the Seward Highway, and you're going to go get onto the Sterling Highway. And what it does is it cuts the mountains, and you're going to be driving basically parallel to the Kenai River, which comes to the outlet from Kenai Lake. And it really is a really spectacular, one of the most beautiful places in all of Alaska. It's just surrounded by mountains. You have this beautiful green water that's like glacier fed snowmelt, and there's fishing in that river. But also something you can do, again, if you're like have mobility issues, is there's great rafting tours. Just go down it and just float in the raft and just take photos. There's bald eagles on the shore. Usually there's always fishermen pulling in fish, usually bears, almost always bears. They people fishing in the Kenai River just kind of learn to live with bears. They're over there doing their thing and you're doing your thing, and nobody bothers each other. It's kind of crazy, but it's a really, really beautiful spot, and it's definitely worth stopping. I think people that don't fish often overlook this, but it's a really gorgeous area. And there's actually a place right where the river, right where the lake lets out into the river. There's a boardwalk that you can pull over and get out and look around, and it's really gorgeous right there.
Okay, and I can't remember. I know on one of the rivers up there, they actually have a handicap fishing area where there's like well, I don't want to call it a pier, but there's something, I guess, a dock that they can walk out on. And
that's the one.
Oh, okay, that's that one, and they can actually fish from there. So if you're handicapped, you can sit there, and if you want to fish, there's a place and a way you can do that right on the river.
Let me correct myself. There's that one. There's one by the ferry, and there's also one a little bit further down, right off Skilac Lake Road.
Okay, so actually three choices for those of you that like to fish, that have challenges. And by the way, you can also go fishing out of Seward and
Whittier,
and depending on what you're looking for. Trying to remember, I think it was rock fishing and salmon fishing and maybe some halibut out of Seward.
Yeah, you can do that. And yep. They do a lot of what they call trolling fishing for salmon out of Seward as well.
Yeah. So, okay. Do we still have time left, or are we? Is our journey coming to a close? I don't remember what day we're on now.
Well, we got one more stop that I would recommend, and some people choose to do one or the other. Some people want to do both. And there's another really beautiful coastal community about 3 hours south of Cooper Landing called Homer. And as you're driving down, the drive itself, again, is a really, you'll come out of what's called Soldotna, the larger community, and you'll start driving along the Cook Inlet and the bluffs. And on a clear day, you're looking across the Cook Inlet, and there's volcanoes, these snow-capped volcanoes, and the Tordillo Mountains far to your west. It's a really spectacular, beautiful setting. There's a couple of pull-offs there that I highly recommend people make and take some pictures. It's really gorgeous, the drive itself. So then you come into Homer, and the thing about Homer is, well, let me kind of backtrack a bit. When you drive into Seward, you drive in, and you're driving in, and the trees cleared, all of a sudden, pop, there's mountains up all around you, and the ocean's in front of you. The Homer is the exact opposite. As you come around this corner, you'll come up, and it'll open up over Kachemak Bay, and it's pop, and it's like nothing but water and this big open sweeping view of Kachemak Bay and Cook Inlet and the mountains and stuff, and then the Kenai Mountains in the background and the Granite White Glacier, and it is quite a spectacular setting. And there is a whole nother plethora of stuff to do in Homer. There's actually a winery there that we like to go to quite a bit, which actually has lodging, I might add. and they make wines out of a lot of local Alaskan berries, rhubarb, and then they also blend it with fruits that we don't necessarily have here in Alaska. Definitely worth a trip. There's also a couple of breweries there that you can visit as well. Microbreweries are very, very big in Alaska, by the way. There's pretty much every little town in Alaska. If you enjoy beer, you could just do a tour of just going to microbreweries all around the state. There's also a long paved bike path that goes, Homer's really rebuilt its city to be very bike friendly, and this bike friendly is kind of wheelchair friendly. And there's bathrooms all over the place, and there's a great paved bike path that will go from one end of the spit, this big long piece of land where a lot of the shops and restaurants are. That's kind of the centerpiece of Homer. All it juts out in the middle of the ocean, and it goes all over town. It's this great paved bike path, and it in itself is just worth nice little stroll or whatever.
Okay, and Homer is probably more known for halibut fishing.
Yes, it's actually, there's a big sign when you come into town. It's the halibut fishing capital of the world, and so that's one of the big draws is people go there and they take a halibut charter out of Homer. Yep.
Yeah. And just so people, because I took my granddaughter halibut fishing, and I was hoping we went out of Icy Strait Point, and we just one of those days we went fishing, not catching, and we had a great day on the water. It was your worst day fishing is better than your best day at work, I've heard. But so how big do halibut get?
They can get 300 pounds. Yeah. I mean, bigger than you. They'll pull you out of the boat if you let them. I mean, they're big. I mean, it's not super common that you'll catch one, but I remember when I was a small child, my grandfather and uncle caught one out in those very waters, actually, out in Cook Inlet, and they brought it home and they hung it from our back porch. So you walk up the stairs to the back door of our split level house, and the head to the tail touched the ground, and it was so big they had to shoot it to get it into the boat with a .357 pistol.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, in halibut in general, if they're going to bring them in the boat, a lot of times they will shoot them because they become a little bit fierce when they get in the boat. And if you're fishing to eat halibut, you want them smaller than that. You like the 20 or 30 pound ones. You're going to get some great halibut steak. Pretty much anywhere in Alaska you can get it processed, and the best way to do it is if you can get it processed and you're getting ready to leave right away, is fly it home as a checked bag, because that's much less expensive than shipping it. But most places have a process where they'll ship it home for you too. It just becomes a little more expensive. Probably not more than good halibut is in your store, but it's not nearly the bargain it is when you go fishing and you take it and fly it home or bring it home with you.
The experience of it too, just being out in the water and stuff too. So definitely.
Yeah.
A couple of things to kind of finish up the itinerary is Homer is kind of a jumping off spot for flying across the Cook Inlet to a few spots that you can do bear viewing depending upon the season. There's a couple different outfits. One flies the McNeil River, and the other one actually flies over to another area and lands right on the beach where the bears congregate, where the river comes out, and you just get out and snap pictures. There's of course sea kayaking there. There's also sea kayaking in Seward and Whittier, if I didn't mention that. And another little thing that I really, really enjoy, my wife and I do, is there's a small little community across Ketchikan Bay called Halibut Cove. It's a little artist community. It was founded by a prominent statesman, he and his wife. And there's a boardwalk. It's basically almost the entire town is on a boardwalk. So again, you can totally travel that with a wheelchair. The only difficulty maybe is you have to make sure that your trip coincided with a decent low tide so you can get up and down the ramp. But there is a phenomenally good restaurant there called the Sultry. The day cruises go there, and you can have lunch and tour around Halibut Cove and look at the galleries and stuff. And then they also have a night one that's specifically just for dinner people. You take the boat over, eat dinner, and then the boat brings you back. And it is a really beautiful area. And if you get a chance, I highly, highly recommend it.
Okay, and so that was out of Homer.
Over Homer, yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Well, very cool. I appreciate your time today. Now, so I'm assuming that you could help people if somebody wanted to try to put something together that you're available to help with that.
I absolutely am. So the name of my website is Togo, as in the lead dog, the famous lead dog of Togo, the Disney movie. Togo, Alaska, travelconsulting.com.
Okay, so there will be a link in down below. And by the way, if you had any questions or comments for Sean, put them in the description for the YouTube video. And Sean and I are one. We'll get you answers to your questions. Like I said, you'll find a link to his website. So if you're looking at planning a trip up there, I would highly recommend that you get a hold of Sean and talk to him about it. And again, Sean, I appreciate so much your time and being on the show today. You have been a great guest. You've had a lot of really helpful information, and I am sure we will talk again sometime.
All right. Well, Ken, it's my pleasure. I always love talking about my homeland. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, rightly so. It is so beautiful. And for those of you that haven't been, you need to put that on your bucket list because it is just amazing. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do me a favor, if you haven't already done so, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll know when I release another video. And we'll see you next time.